Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream for now week 2 of the 2025 fantasy football season. After we have all witnessed what was in the beginning, at least the first half of that Bears versus Vikings game, a very, I would say, boring event. Luckily, in the second half, the Minnesota Vikings roared back, gave us some sort of entertainment, some sort of kind of fantasy sustenance in regards to points. Of course, it forced the Chicago Bears to have to score, and of course, the Chicago Bears blow another lead. It is what it is. That is week 1. The conclusion of week 1 comes with a lot of unfortunate news. You know, some underwhelming performances, some injuries, but that is the nature of fantasy football, and that is football in general. We're going to have injuries. We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have ebbs and flows. But as we continue throughout this marathon, that is the 2025 fantasy football season, we'll continue to try to just improve our teams, make the right decisions, and try to gather the information that is now privy to us based on what we saw in week 1. And yes, there was a lot to see, and try to continue to stack up victories. I hope you guys are doing well on this wonderful Monday night. Yes, week 1 was exciting. I think it was a lot better than week 1 of last year. If you guys remember, this time last year was one of the worst week 1s of all time. All things considered, don't overreact. I know this is Overreaction Monday. I know many of you want to potentially crown players as the new, top of the position, such as a Justin Fields, or you potentially want to drop players that, of course, weren't able to kind of live up to their fantasy draft capital that you utilized this summer to draft them. All in all, we should be in a good spot. So over the course of the next hour, we're answering any and all fantasy football questions in regards to the waiver wire, in regards to week 2. Now, again, if you guys have lineup questions regarding week 2, expect me probably to kind of, I would say, go back and forth on a question of like, who am I starting in my flex? Because I haven't even finished watching every game to completion as of yet. So again, I'm still preparing for tomorrow's running back rankings video, still trying to watch every single snap from every running back in week 1. But once I get there, of course, we'll be in a good spot. Okay, really quickly, a couple reminders. If you guys do send in a question, make sure you include your scoring format, half PPR, full PPR standard, 4-point per passing touchdown, 6-point per passing touchdown, all that kind of jazz. Additionally, if you guys haven't yet already, do me a favor, click the like button down below. That is greatly appreciated. And we'll get into answering questions. A quick reminder, as I typically, of course, let you guys know, if you guys want those Sunday morning rankings for the remainder of the season, be sure to check out Betr. Again, they're the partner of this channel over the course of this season. Not only, of course, am I going to be providing plays with them, which we finally hit a play. In all of week 1, every single play I suggest absolutely floundered, except for today's, in regards to Loveland and Hawkinson delivering finally, sweet justice to the better plays. But if you guys want those rankings, again, all you got to do is use code Andrew, make that first time deposit minimum of 10, and make that first time play within a real cash play, and you'll get those Sunday morning rankings sent from my email directly to yours. If you had already done that prior to Sunday and didn't receive those rankings, my email is down below in the description. Shoot me an email and let me see if I can help you out in regards to getting that all settled and away with for the upcoming Sundays. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? OJ running with the first question of tonight. OJ, thank you very much. Says, drop Kittle for Johnson, Kraft, Fannin, or Strange. Okay, so in regards to Kittle, obviously we're going to put him in the injured reserve once he is eligible for that positioning. The report earlier today that I read specifically said anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks. He's probably going to be, considering his age, considering the severity of the injury, based on what the MRI kind of holds, I would like to assume an IR stint may be in line here. So he will be occupying your IR spot for the next 4 weeks. Of course, you want to put him in your IR. As to who we are filling him in for, I think there can be many trains of thought here. So earlier today, I did post my waiver wire rankings video in terms of pickups at the running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, kicker, and defensive positions. That is posted on the channel. I mentioned Juwan Johnson, I mentioned Fannin, and I mentioned Strange as my top 3 option. I also mentioned Michael Mayer as like a honorable mention, depending on what Brock Bowers' status looks like going into this week, if you are in need of a flyer option later in the week once we fully get a clearance as to what the status of Bowers is. But as of right now, of those available, I think Kraft long-term for the remainder of the season is somebody that we want. I think the next best option then at that point will be Juwan Johnson. Not only, of course, is he coming off of a great week this week with, being the highest targeted tight end in all of week 1, but additionally on top of that, again, last season to close the 2024 season from weeks 13 through 18 was the number 12 tight end in terms of total fantasy points scored in a half PPR. in the last 3 games in which he has played with a starting Spencer Rattler, has been able to produce 9 or more fantasy points in each of those 3 games. So if you play in a full PPR, Juwan Johnson is probably the direction we're going in based on the volume of receptions in comparison to Kraft, who is very much so reliant on touchdowns, but oftentimes the touchdowns that he is exposed to, or I mean, at least the red zone opportunities he's exposed to, are frequent enough to where he stays relevant. I also talked about Fannin for about 10 minutes today. It would have felt like at least 10 minutes. The way that they utilize Fannin, I'm telling you, it's Isaiah Likely 2.0, which scares me because then I get PTSD from what Isaiah Likely did to me last season when I utilized very early, waiver wire fab and priority list on him, only for him to burn me for the remainder of the season and average 6 points from weeks 2 through 18. So hopefully Fannin is not going to be that. But it would go Kraft, Johnson, Fannin, Strange in terms of the future. If you're just, and that's the way that I'd probably run it. I wouldn't pick up Fannin unless I already had a tight end. So in your case, I'm not picking up Fannin because I want to have somebody, I want to be able to pick up 2 of these 4 tight ends, theoretically speaking, and then just play it by matchup going forward. But in your case, obviously, you're just immediately trying to fill in for Kittle. So then it's just a Kraft Johnson play. Try to get one of the 2. Thank you very much. Also, it says I have Addison in the IR. Yeah, that's got to go then. Priorities. Kittle's got to stay, and Addison's got to go. Thank you very much. Justin McMillan sends in a question. Justin, thank you very much, sir. Says trade Tedero McMillan for ETN. I'm light at running back. Okay, so as of earlier today, Tank Bigsby, who I mentioned there was a possibility of him being traded in the offseason, was traded today to the Philadelphia Eagles of all team, which I did not anticipate to be the case. I thought he would be traded to a team that is RB needy. I don't see the Eagles as a team that is RB needy, but then again, maybe they're trying to lessen the workload of opportunity for Saquon Barkley. We obviously saw some run between Will Shipley and A.J. Dillon this most recent week against the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. So there's a possibility in which they brought in Tank Bigsby to be that RB2 going forward. So ETN, Tootin, they're going to be the 1-2 combo. Of course, that is going to be our Rashad White, Bucky Irving, theoretically, going into this season. So they've established that full well. So if you are a Bayshall Tootin manager, congratulations. You are one step closer to gaining the fantasy value that you, of course, are seeking with the investment. As for going after ETN with McMillan, I think McMillan had a pretty rough week at it. Obviously, Bryce Young didn't look good. If you're super light at running back, I'm not sure if I'm trying to buy high on an ETN rather than trying to buy low on other specific running backs. That's kind of just like my methodology as to when I go looking for trades. I'm not as keen to look for players that are coming off of probably the best week they're going to have all season long. ETN with 143 yards. I mean, again, that's some, it's career high numbers. We're not going to probably see that very often from him. So I would feel more comfortable going after alternative options that are buy lows. I try to go knock on a different door here. But in the event in which you cannot get a higher tier running back for a 2-for-1, maybe a 2-for-2, specifically names that I would like to throw out. In regards to how this week went, you play in a PPR, right? Let me change this format here. Let me look at some names across the board. In regards to specific names that I'm thinking about, Omarion Hampton. I potentially try to go and knock on that door, see what kind of potential there is there, because I would feel more comfortable with that, to be honest, rest of the season. Additionally, on top of that, Travion Henderson, I go knock on that door. Ashton Genty, please and thank you. Jonathan Taylor, if they're pissed off, thank you very much. Anything like that. Chase Brown, you guys know how I feel about that. But if not, and this is the best running back that you can pull, then and you're obviously RB needy, then yeah, let's go for it. OJ Running sends in a follow-up, says, do I drop Dak Prescott for Fields, Caleb Williams, Lawrence, or Penix? Yeah, Fields would be the answer. Based on what we witnessed from the Jets offense and how incredible they are in terms of their run blocking ability, running the ball to the left side for Breece Hall has never been easier. I mean, that combo was just completely decimating the defensive line and the linebackers of the Pittsburgh Steelers for the majority of that game. And then on that screen pass that Breece Hall had, I mean, they blitzed. No one, and TJ Watt tried to make the tackle. He couldn't even get out there in time. Either way, Fields number 1. And I would still say, Caleb Williams, despite the inaccuracy, he's still fantasy relevant because he can move. And that's what we, of course, are investing in. We want players that can run, and Fields and Caleb are those answers. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Vince Jordan sends in a question. Says, my 12-team standard league, trade any combo of Odunze, Waddle, ETN for Herbert. Currently only have Stroud on roster, understood. Other guy has no receivers, or do I just sit tight? No. You got to go. We can't survive with Stroud. We couldn't survive with Stroud last year. We have the exact same issue from last year repeating this year. There aren't enough viable weapons surrounding him. With Christian Kirk already going down with a hamstring and missing week 1, the possibility of re-aggravation, possibility of him missing extended time, it's not worth throwing early games. At this point, if he wants Waddle, be my guest. Because that offense for the Dolphins looked, it's a car crash. It's like, it's hard to watch, but at the same time, you can't look away. And that's exactly what we experienced. So, yeah, I don't mind going in that direction in order to get Herbert. Now, if you say a combo, if I've got to give up 2 players from those 3 and you have like a stacked roster, then sure, you can maybe throw 2 of them, but I don't know if it's worth it at 2. At that point, I just hit the waiver wire because there's got to be something else available. Abram sends in a question. Thank you very much, sir. Should I pick up Goddard for Kittle in a full PPR? In this case, if you want to pick up, what is Goddard's like rostership percentage? In a PPR, obviously, he's significantly more valuable. Let me go to sleep, and let's see here. If we go to players, we go to Mr. Dallas Goedert. Obviously, he had himself a pretty high volume of receptions. That's primarily because A.J. Brown was a no-show in that game. 7 receptions on 7 targets. Pretty solid week there. Currently rostered in 68% of leagues, which I'm surprised he's available in your league in that case. Because usually he's like the tight end 2 on somebody's roster. In this case, if the likes of, if Goddard's available, I don't mind that. If a Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz isn't also available, Juwan Johnson, then yeah, I think Goddard's perfectly fine. The upcoming matchups against Kansas City, Los Angeles Rams, Tampa Bay. In terms of the next couple of weeks, I think you'll be fine with them. That works. But yeah, definitely not dropping Kittle. Just put him in your IR when the opportunity becomes available. Velas408 sends in a question, says drop Higgins for Goddard, Strange, or Ertz in a full PPR. Yeah, so this is the question. Are we looking for rest of season value from these plays, or are we looking for a 1 week fill-in? Because legitimately, I think Strange is the best of the available within this week's matchup against Cincinnati. Again, the Cincinnati Bengals just gave up 10 catches for over 100 yards against the Cleveland Browns. The Cincinnati Bengals had given up the most receptions per game to opposing tight ends last season, and that continues to stay relevant. So Brenton Strange, theoretically, for the Jaguars would be one of the plays that I would like to have for this week. But if we're looking for like long-term value, perhaps Brenton Strange isn't that potential answer, and it is a Goddard or Ertz because, of course, they're veterans. They're getting consistent target opportunity. Ertz is, over the course of the last, 10 games now, averaging over 10 points per game for fantasy purposes in a full PPR. So personally, if they're both healthy, I prefer to have Ertz. But in this case, if we're looking for a 1 week play, it's Strange. All right, we had a follow-up from Abram, who says Goddard, Fannin, Kraft, Otten, or for Kittle. When you say for Kittle, I'm assuming you mean in the replacement of him, not like we're dropping Kittle. Please and thank you. Unless you're playing in a 6-man league, 4-man league, Kittle never gets dropped, right? So in this specific circumstance, once he goes to the IR, if those are my available options, again, I am still okay. Otten didn't even have a single reception. I would go Kraft 1, I would go Goddard 2, I'd go Fannin 3, I'd go Otten 4. Thank you very much, Abram. Appreciate that. The S-Box sends in a question, says in a full PPR. Okay, let's see what we have here, brother. I'm a Birds fan here. What would be a fair trade comp for AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, or Goddard? My team consists of Collins, Flowers, Judy, Reed, Leggett, Kittle, Kincaid, Eckler, Genti, Kamara, and Mixon. Okay, interesting circumstance here. So considering you'd be theoretically trading for AJ Brown or Smitty, I would assume that the team that you were going to make this deal with would require some potential wide receiver depth in return. So I'd be like floating, hey, I'm going to give you Judy, you give me Smitty. I'll give you Flowers, you give me AJ Brown. That's the kind of trades that I think right now are comparable. Thank you, S-Box. Appreciate it. Mo Money sends in a question, says, who should I prioritize on the waiver wire this week? I got Justin Herbert available, Hollywood Brown, and everyone on your waiver wire video is on the wire. I have my number 2 pick. My team is in the comments. Okay, Mo Money, let me see if I can travel to the comments really quickly and see what's going on there. Where are we here? Okay, let's see. Where is Mo? All right, Mo. Looking at your team as a whole, Dak Prescott, Amon-Ra, BTJ, JSN, Worthy, Odunze, Jaden Higgins, okay, Kamara, Connor, Travion Henderson, Harvey, Judkins, Mixon, and Njoku. Okay, so with that context available, who are we picking up? So obviously, in terms of long term, I think the most valuable add to you going forward, because the fact that you have Amon-Ra, BTJ, and JSN leads me to believe, like, okay, if you're playing in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, you don't need to try to go after Worthy. At that point, you're going after most likely Justin Herbert at that point. That's probably the plan of action in this circumstance, because you're not, I mean, I know best case scenario, you get another wide receiver that would start. And in the case of Marquise Brown, he would be an automatic potential starter. But when you have JSN going for a 54% target share, BTJ, I understand, was underwhelming, and Amon-Ra was relatively underwhelming with the entirety of that offense. But long term, Marquise Brown is a short-term player. If I'm looking towards the future, I'm probably just trying to improve that quarterback position and then also address the tight end position with trying to bring in Jawan Johnson there as another alternative option. Thanks, man. Xavier sends in a question, says, in a full PPR, Shakir or Waddle West this season? I mean, look, as of right now, where the offense looks to be going in the direction of for the Miami Dolphins, unless there are going to be incredible improvements, and specifically in this week, we're going to be in a little bit of a shambles situation with Waddle. So in a full PPR, the safety relies and revolves around Shakir, considering what he was able to accomplish last season as a top. Again, if it wasn't for the injury that he sustained in the games that he missed last season, he was going to easily be in the top 30 of the wide receiver conversation, which at this point, from what we saw last year with a healthy Tua Tagovailoa and thus far this season, Waddle in that scenario is a stretch and a reach, because unless we are moving on to a different kind of structured offense to where we are going to consistently hit him with targets and he's not going to get injured when we do hit him with those targets, it's tough, man. Let's see here. Dak or Mahomes week 2? Oh, man, I don't even know. Let me think about this. Mahomes plays against Philadelphia. Dak plays against the Giants. The thing is, Mahomes' rushing upside is just, I think, a little too difficult to ignore. I know he played, not the greatest football game in the Super Bowl, but I think that rushing upside is a little bit too tricky to not go after in this circumstance. Thank you. Little boy Boo sends in a question. Thank you very much. Long time no see, my man. Start Pitts until Kittle is back or pivot. No. Pitts is fine, especially with London's shoulder injury and Darnell Mooney also dealing with his shoulder injury. It seems like Kyle Pitts is probably in line for a pretty good target share volume going forward, especially, again, coming off of a week in which, again, it was an advantageous matchup for him. They like to get him utilized pretty heavily against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's happened for 3 consecutive games against them with Zach Robinson as the OC. So as long as that's going to be consistent, I think it's perfectly fine. I don't have an issue with it. Now, as for taking on Minnesota, Carolina, Washington in the next 3 weeks, it may not be the greatest matchups, but when he's the primary number one outside of, 2 injured receivers and a Ray McCloud, I would assume that he'll be perfectly fine in these scenarios. You don't have to go burning any fab in the meanwhile. Thank you. Let's see here. Devin sends in a question. Devin Stater says, was offered this in a full PPR. My Chase Brown and either Egbuka or Rice for Nico and Hampton. I'm going to be totally honest here. Okay, looking at it objectively speaking, I would be perfectly fine giving Chase and Egbuka for Nico and Hampton. I think there is enough comparable value going forward, and that what Hampton and Nico accomplished in week 1 isn't reminiscent as to what they can accomplish rest of season. So I think in the long term, it's probably the right play. I'm definitely not handing out Rice, though. Based on what I just saw Marquise Hollywood Brown do on a short notice week of ridiculous volume, Rice is going to come back and probably take over the league. If anything, I'm trying to trade for Rice right now in my leagues. So as of right now, leaning towards the idea of most likely taking it and being pretty happy with it. Now, in the event in which you're like, listen, I like Chase Brown, I like Egbuka, I want to hold, yeah, that's fine. Listen, I'm a Chase Brown guy. Anytime I have to trade him away, it makes my stomach sick, but it's okay. Because that offensive line is horrible. They cannot run block. All right, Julian sends in a question, says Kittle is out, Henry Pitts or Ertz on the waivers. As of those available right now, I'm going to go with Pitts, especially considering the injuries that have occurred to the receiving options of the Atlanta Falcons. Thanks, man. Avon sends in a follow-up. Says, would Johnson be better than Kraft in a PPR? Theoretically, yes. But here's the thing, like, Johnson's value is pretty much attached to whether or not we have Foster Moreau / Taysom Hill and how long they're going to be gone for. Now, again, if you're trying to fill in for Kittle, in the short term, Johnson theoretically is better. Because, again, he doesn't have to rely upon touchdown upside. And if he gets the touchdown upside, he's easily in the top 4 of the tight ends by the end of the week. So in a full PPR, I can fully understand it, especially from what we have seen from Kraft's usage as of late, specifically last season and thus far this season. They're not great numbers. It feels like the Green Bay Packers just do not care to have a number 1 guy. They're just going to throw to the open man and really pretty much take what the defense gives them. So in this circumstance, yeah, I don't mind the idea of going Johnson because you're chasing short-term points in the next couple weeks here. But hey, maybe it turns into long-term. You never know. GBG Tony sends in a question. Says, drop Garendo or Bigsby for Juwan Johnson. I would drop Garendo. Thank you. Christopher Franco sends in a question. Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate that, my man. Says, drop Eckler for Dylan Sampson or Trey Benson. You know, the thing about Eckler is because they were in a positive game script, there wasn't really an actuality of him getting enough opportunity. So as of right now, I'm thinking to myself, like, sure, Dylan Sampson comes away with 8 targets, 8 receptions on 16 routes ran. That's an unsustainable number. Quinshon Judkins is going to soon be in the mix. Trey Benson, outside of a nice 52-yard run, the other 8 rushing attempts he had led to like 16 yards, right? Like, Trey Benson's a handcuff. Dylan Sampson is, again, going to be valuable, but I think Eckler is somebody that I'm not 100% willing to just like dispatch as of yet. Do I want to drop him for Dylan Sampson? Let me see something real quick. Hold up. Where is, I need my link. Let's see if I have an update here. Yeah, let's go to the Washington Commanders. Let's go to week 1. Yeah, look, when Eckler is still playing 47% of the snaps, as soon as they get into these games, like this upcoming Thursday, when you're playing against Green Bay's defense and you have to throw the ball in that second half or even early in the game, we've seen him be incredibly relevant to where I'm not 100% willing to just dispatch him just yet. But if I could get Dylan Sampson in another fashion in which I can drop somebody else, then sure. Sprinkles 276 sends in a question. Says full PPR. I have Moore and Adunze. Okay, that's an interesting pair. Do I pick up Zacchaeus? Given the touches he'll get in the slot instead of one of the others. No, I'm not going that direction. I'll just keep it as is. Personally, I'm not going to chase what Zacchaeus put forward today. It's not something that I'm interested in chasing. I'll just stick with the talent that is provided from Moore and Adunze, and I'm going to hope that, of course, the coaching staff, specifically Ben Johnson, is going to put these other receivers in positions to succeed in comparison to kind of what we've witnessed thus far. Yeah, it's a learning process. I get it. It's early, but yeah, I'm not jumping at the opportunity of picking up Zacchaeus. All right, let's hear. Lou sends in a question. Says drop Kincaid or Loveland for Pitts, Jonnu, or Jawan. Look, at this point, if I'm in your position, I'm probably just keeping Kincaid going. Keep him as my starter, keep Loveland on the bench, and see how this kind of tight end position transpires with his situation. That's probably the way I go about it. Now, if you're really chasing points, I could understand if you wanted to drop Loveland, but I personally wouldn't. I think the way that you're set up, I'm just going to keep rolling with Kincaid, and I just hold Loveland on my bench and see if he can actually transform into the player that we know he's capable of becoming when given the full opportunity reign, just like how Tyler Warren was exposed to earlier this week. Magic Bell sends in a question. Says, remember when I was more worried about Henderson stealing all the touches over Hampton? Boy, was I wrong. Thanks for the advice. Hope you won as well. Now, listen, in my main home league, I play in so really quickly, I play in a super flex format. Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are my quarterbacks, okay? Needless to say, I did not win this week, okay? So, yeah, if you guys are worried or curious as to how I did in my main home league, which, again, is my most important league of all, everything else is irrelevant at that point. Yeah, definitely didn't come away with a win. I played against the Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers team this week, so let's just put it that way. GBG Tony sends in a follow-up. Thank you, GBG. Appreciate it. Says also, should I consider starting Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt / Sampson over Montgomery or Pearsall, Cedric, Smitty, or over Tyreek. Okay, really quickly. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I think, is pretty much has already won himself the job. Now, as for Samson, that is a to be determined kind of situation depending on matchup. Now, in this specific, and also it also will be determined by whether or not we have a Quinshon Judkins available. If Judkins theoretically is active, then I think Samson's a lesser play. In the event in which he is inactive, then Samson, I think, also could very much so in a PPR alongside a Merritt. We could have the discussion of playing him over, both of them actually, over Montgomery within a given week. Now, as for your follow-up question, Pearsall, Cedric, Tillman, and Smitty over Tyreek Hill, that's also a discussion that could be had. Pearsall for sure. When we know that George Kittle and Jawan Jennings are both injured right now, Pearsall is going to the moon. If you got your Pearsall shares, strap in because we are absolutely launching. Now, as for Cedric Tillman, of course, as long as you're associated with Joe Flacco, you're going to be fantasy relevant. So, of course, he'll be fine for the next couple weeks here in negative game scripts against some pretty tough defenses. Smitty over Tyreek Hill. I don't mind it. The thing about Tyreek Hill is that there's always the intrigue of, hey, maybe they bounce back. Maybe he has one singular pass, that goes for a pretty long volume of yards. But it's been, I think, a full 365 days since Tyreek Hill has had a passing completion or a reception for over 30 yards. So it's been a while since we've seen him make some, some potential plays down the field. As of right now, in regards to going into week 2, let me see. The Dolphins are taking on the Patriots in Miami. I would still play Tyreek Pearsall for sure as my 1-2 there. Brent McFarland sends in a question. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. Says, hey, Andrew, great content. Should I trade Bashaw Tootin for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt now that Bigsby is headed to the Jaguars? If you can, you should. If you could theoretically get JCM in exchange for just Tootin, then I would do that. ETN owner sent me the trade. I would. Yeah. I think what Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has already accomplished as a part of that offense, and he's only going to continue to build upon, is the reason why many of us drafted him where we did. We made the investment because we know that he's going to be theoretically the early down back of that offense. We know what Brian Robinson Jr. last season was able to accomplish with that workload. Obviously, there's the threats of Eckler, Deebo Samuel that are also going to be rushing, on top of the fact that, of course, we have that quarterback there with Jaden Daniels scooting and scoring touchdowns with his legs. But as of right now, I'd be willing to make that move, especially if you need running back depth now, because Tootin is an investment for the future still. While Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is more of like we're in the now, let's go. The future is here. Thank you. Octavio sends in a question, says, I got offered Jamar Chase for Josh Allen. Great. Sounds good. I'll take Jamar Chase. Thank you. Give him a nice firm handshake, and honestly, maybe a hug and be like, hey, good deal. Thank you very much. You're getting a good one. And then take Jamar Chase and run to the hills. Absolutely run to the hills. All right, Tan Fam sends in a question. Says, I lost by 0.12 because of the last DJ Moore fumble. You know what's funny, Tan Fam? I legitimately watched that final play, and I said out loud, somebody just lost their fantasy league because of that DJ Moore fumble. And you, in fact, are that person. And that is incredibly unfortunate, but hey, it happens. It happens, man. I'm so sorry. Should I drop him for Antonio Brown on the waiver? Oh my goodness, that's so unfortunate, my man. That is, I'd be pretty hot for that. I'd be pretty pissed off if that was me. I'd say that at the very least. Rogo sends in a question. Rogo, hope you're doing well. Says, what's up, bro? I'm screwed. What do I do? I'm in a 12-man full PPR with Jaden Daniels, Ladd McConkey, Jacoby Myers, Gibbs, Swift, Kittle, Pacheco, McLaughlin in the Denver defense. My bench consisting of Adunze, Shaheed, Strange, Benson, and Mims. Number 8 priority. I think you're in a good spot. Obviously, we're playing Brenton Strange over Kittle this week. Once you go ahead and you can place him on the IR, then we're looking to try to get some kind of, I would say, comparable, hopeful bench depth in terms of I would say a flexible option. If a Cedric Tillman is out there and you can use your number 8 priority to move up and grab him and play him in the flex, cool. If not, then we're going to use Adunze in your flex going forward, or Shaheed, which I think are both very good options. And if anything, I think this week may be a week where you might want to wait and just move up the priority list. Maybe not utilize it because you're at number 8 and just kind of pick up players off of the waivers after waivers have already run at like 3 a.m. That's at least what I do because I'm I'm a psychopath when it comes to this kind of stuff. Anyway, Nathan Dennison sends in a question, says, question is in Discord. You know what the problem is, Nathan? When you send me a question on Discord, because there's so much chaos there. Okay, let's see here. My camera's out of focus. Great, fantastic. Love to see it. Why did my camera do that? Sorry about that, guys. It's okay. You couldn't see my blurry face, or you couldn't. It doesn't matter. My pretty smile was not in focus. It is what it is. Whatever. Okay. Anyway, good to be gone. Let's see here. All right. I see your question. Here we go. So it says, you answered my question during the live stream this week, so don't stress it. How are we feeling about Bigsby? I think he's just being traded for depth purposes. I don't think they're going to utilize him very much. I think he's, at this point, just a handcuff to Saquon. Drafted him because I have ETN. Would you say drop Bigsby unless you know more? I mean, look, let's say, for example, let's just hold Bigsby until we get to Sunday. That's literally all I want to do, because I'm thinking to myself, why trade for Bigsby if Will Shipley and AJ Dillon are perfectly fine? Unless they just truly want to upgrade their RB2, it feels like it's not a necessary move for the Eagles unless something maybe happened to Saquon and we just aren't privy to it. So I'd hold on to him for a little bit there, just for 1 week maybe. It says also, what in the world do we do with Tracy Jr.? Just give it a week. He had a good volume of touches. Just give it a week. The thing about Tracy is, again, I think in due time, Scadaboo's probably going to take over. Until then, we're probably trying to, because of how inefficient that offense was. I mean, look, just imagine once Jackson Dart takes over, I think the offense will be better, or at least a little bit more exciting. But until then, I also believe that, Tracy, to an extent, is someone that we want to utilize until we can ship. So that may be coming quicker than later. All right, the S-Box says, in a 1-quarterback league, my quarterbacks are Nix and Stroud. Do I drop either for Fields, Penix, or Rodgers? Yeah, immediately I'm dropping Stroud for Fields, and I am smiling as I'm starting Fields in the coming weeks here. Duro Modi, what's up, man? Long time no see, very familiar name. Been around the channel for the last couple of years. Duro says, Drew, what's good? In a 12-man 2-flex league PPR, should I trade Lamar, Jalen Warren for St. Brown, Rashee Rice, and Quinshon Judkins? Interesting. Okay, let's see. What else do you have at quarterback? Says I have Chase Brown, St. Brown. No, sorry. I have Chase, St. Brown, Rashee, Hampton, JCM, Ridley, McMillan, Kraft. I'd sign a quarterback. Oh, wait. You're okay. So I'd sign a quarterback. Yeah, okay. So that would be your roster. Sounds good to me. I would immediately make that trade. It's not even remotely close in my mind. I think if you make this trade and you get St. Brown, Rashee Rice, and Judkins for Lamar and Jalen Warren, you are not only fleecing that, but I think you're going to get vetoed out of the league. Someone is going to say you paid for this trade because that's a steal if you get St. Brown and Rice there. So get it done, sign a quarterback, and keep it moving, man. Shung Bull sends in a question, says questions in the comments. All right, Shung. I see it. Says I need to trade for an RB2. I got Jalen Hurts, Chase Brown, RJ Harvey, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall, David Njoku, Pickens, Shakir, Kraft, and Chubb. What should I do? I mean, look, I think Chubb actually played relatively well. He had 2 rushes of over 10 yards, had a pretty good yard per carry average. Obviously, the game script didn't really allow for him to be more implicated. Obviously, he's not going to be a receiving back within that offense. There's a lot of Derek Gumbawale, Woody Marks, Damian Pierce in the rotation. But if you're looking for a solid RB2, and Harvey's not cutting it right now, I think we're just being patient going forward, or effectively just trying to buy low on candidates. I'm never trying to buy high. Somebody asked me earlier, can I trade for ETN? I don't want to pay at a premium after the player has just had maybe their best week of the season, right? So I'd be a little bit more comfortable trading for players that had a lackluster week 1 like Omarion Hampton. So if you can go and you can look in the direction of potentially bringing in a player of that caliber, then that's what we'll do. But until then, I'm not over the moon flying at some of the other alternative options potentially. So yeah, let's give that a shot. See what we can do. As for who you'd probably give up in exchange to try to go get that, I think it depends on what that team looks like. Obviously, they're probably going to want a running back in return, or maybe they won't. Maybe they have enough RB depth to be able to secure it, and they'll just require some wide receiver depth in exchange. So go knock on that door, see what comes of it, my man. Abram sends in a question: should I drop Kraft for Warren in a half PPR? I have Laporta. You're talking about Tyler Warren? Yes, I would. Tyler Warren has already done it. He's done it. I mean, we already knew that Tyler Warren was going to be this year's Laporta-esque Bowers, in the idea that he was going to be the best rookie tight end and he was going to immediately be relevant. So yeah, I think it's a good spot to go pick him up here. Ed sends in a question. Ed, thank you very much, sir. Says Fields, Murray, or Herbert? Wow. Okay, that's a great question. Look, my pre-draft ranking pretty much stays as such. Well, you know what? Now that I say that, maybe it doesn't, because I technically did have Murray ahead of Fields. No, I'm swapping it. It would go Fields number 1. That's who I want. Because of the rushing upside and how great that offense looked, even against the Pittsburgh defense, it's hard for me not to go in that direction. Now, if you don't get Fields because somebody beats you to it in terms of waiver priority, and you have to settle for Herbert or Murray, that's really good as well. I have no problem with it. In terms of the potential of the future, again, I'm always going to lean towards quarterbacks that can run. I know Herbert was scooting against the Kansas City Chiefs the other day, but typically I want that rushing upside. Let me see. What did even Kyler do on the rushing category this week? I haven't even looked at quarterback stats just one for one. Kyler Murray, yeah. I mean, whenever you're able to get to 38 rushing yards, that's great. But Herbert was able to technically get 32 with the same volume of attempts. If Herbert keeps that rushing upside up, technically he'll be better than Murray because he's got a better receiving core around him and a better offense as a whole. But Fields still number 1. Says, I have McBride. Also, can you rank these for wide receiver 1? Wide receiver 3, Sutton, Colts. Sutton at the Colts, McMillan at the Cardinals, Ridley at the Rams. Great question. As of right now, I'd probably go Sutton, McMillan, Ridley. That's the order in which I go about it. Thank you. Leap Link in the chat was saying, isn't Purdy injured? Yeah, he's currently injured. He's questionable for this week. Luckily for all of us, Mac Jones is what literally created Brian Thomas Jr. So for those of you who are looking towards, hey, Andrew, can we trust in Pearsall even though it's potentially going to be a Purdy-less offense for maybe a week here? Don't worry about it. Mac Jones knows how to get his number 1 receiver the ball at a double-digit rate at that. Juice Vino sends in a question. Thank you, Juice. Appreciate it, my man. Says the following. Sup, Drew? Am I trading for anyone? I have Nix, Saquon, Kyron, Kamara, Tyreek, Mike Evans, Pearsall, Golden Njoku, Evans, Bigsby, Debo. Thanks, man. I mean, at this point, are you trading for anyone? I'm probably in your position looking to trade for a tight end legitimately. Again, when I watched Harold Fannin today, it's giving me the same feeling I had when Isaiah Likely did what he did to Mark Andrews last year. Now, we could have the exact same thing occur again to where it's a 1-week fluke and Njoku finishes at the top 5 tight end for the rest of the season. So I'm not over panicking, and I'm not trying to completely make a diabolical 3-for-3 trade. So in this purpose, I'll just say, hey, maybe hit the waiver wire, go pick up another tight end, maybe play somebody else this week until we can see Njoku's capable of. And then once we get an idea as to what his deal is, maybe we'll have to, reevaluate tight end. And if the waiver wire pickups we make isn't going to, I guess, suffice, then we'll move on and we'll make a trade. And you'll utilize somebody that's a wide receiver on your team to be able to accomplish that, because you are very much so in a pretty good depth spot for wide receiver. Otherwise, I'd like to keep Saquon, Kyron, and Kamara, going forward. Abide Los Angeles sends in a question. Says, sup, Andrew, happy birthday. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. It says, questions in the chat. All right, Abide, let's see what you got here, man. It says, Hollywood, Keon Coleman, ETN, Javonte Williams, and Deebo Samuel are on the waivers. I'm willing to give up Montgomery, Moore, or Swift. What do you think, man? Okay, so here's the thing. ETN, Javonte Williams, Keon Coleman, Hollywood, Deebo. Arguably they all needed to have already been rostered. I mean, I don't play in a single league in which any of those players are available. So it's hard for me to tell you to drop David Montgomery for these players. But at this point, if we're looking for because I'm already assuming this is a very small league, maybe 6 teams at most, I would assume that considering this is the case, Sure, geez Louise. I don't think I never thought I would get to this point. Going into this week when Detroit takes on, forgetting who they play against this week. Goodness gracious. I got to pull it up. Detroit plays against... Where's the Lions? Am I blind? They play against the Bears. Honestly, I think I'd rather have Javonte Williams than David Montgomery this week. I'd probably even rather have ETN rather than David Montgomery this week. As to who exactly, you'll know by tomorrow once I go ahead and post my running back rankings video. And at that point, you can make the decision to swap one of those for David Montgomery. And I think you should, just to at least give yourself a better chance of winning week 2, considering the small league. And then as long as Xavier Worthy's out, I would legitimately play Hollywood Brown over Moore every time I have a chance. Until Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy are back, Hollywood would play over Moore. And quite frankly, while we're at it, all things considered, I wouldn't even mind the swap of getting Debo for Swift. If we're just really shaking it all up in a smaller league like this. Thanks, man. Jagar sends in a question. Says in a full PPR, would you trust Knicks week 2 or get somebody like Fields, Danny Dimes, or Rodgers? Honestly, I think whenever you have a chance to pick up someone like Fields, you should. So with the opportunity of doing it, take advantage of it, because not only is it someone that you can utilize in terms of if Knicks continues to play badly, you can go to Fields, or you can even just relieve Fields. You can relieve Knicks of his starting position until he proves himself, and then start Fields accordingly. Or if they both play well, utilize him as a trade piece. So in this position, I think you should just pick up Fields anyway. Thanks, man. Moving on, we had a question from Omar the Grouch, who says, in a 10-team half PPR, I have Mark Andrews. Should I drop Brian Robinson for Hunter Henry, Jawan Jennings, Fannin, or Strange? I'd pick up Juwan Johnson. I would prefer to have Juwan Johnson in this situation. Hunter Henry, I think, is going to be of value, but that offense didn't look great. I'd rather just have the Rattler kind of carry me at that point. As of right now, of the available options, Juwan Johnson would probably be the guy that I kind of lean in the direction of at this point. Monty Mula sends in a question, says, rate my team. I'm feeling about it. We have Knicks. Okay, listen, it's only been 1 week. So really the feelings that I have about this team before I even read it, it's really not going to kind of I'm not going to make a swift judgment on the team based on 1 week's of performance, right? So when I look at your team and it says Knicks, Saquon, you have Mike Evans, you have Chase Brown, you have Tyreek Hill, Kraft, Marvin Harrison, bench consisting of Harvey, Diggs, Charbonnet, Brian Robinson, Pollard, Reed. At this point, you've got 4 solid running backs: Saquon, Chase Brown, Charbonnet, and Pollard. So that's great. Harvey is a to-be-determined kind of asset at this point. You have Evans and Hill. Evans will be better, and of course you have Marvin Harrison Jr. Those are fine. I think, in this circumstance, I think you're playing 3 running backs going forward until Tyreek Hill kind of proves otherwise. Kraft, I think you could also go ahead and drop someone like Brian Robinson off the bench in order to go pick up someone of the caliber of a Juwan Johnson and play that in his stead and just have those guys play matchups. I think at that point, we just keep it rolling. Okay, continuing on. We had a question that comes in from Octavio. Thank you very much. This is in a 10-team league full PPR. Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, Omarion Hampton, Brees, Njoku, Tet McMillan. Bench consisting of Pollard, Montgomery, Golden, Charbonnet, JCM, and Keon Coleman. I got offered Mahomes and Jamar Chase for Josh Allen. Should I do it? I would. Again, just think about it this way. You are getting the number 1 overall player in fantasy football on a full PPR in exchange for a 3rd-round pick in the form of Josh Allen. So you are basically getting they're giving you the keys to the kingdom. I would take it, Octavio. I don't think one singular week of Jamar Chase putting up, quite frankly, his worst performance I've seen from him since week 2 of last year. It's rare. So yes, take Jamar Chase and run to the hills, give him a hug, keep rolling. All right, we had a question follow-up from Rogo. It says, I don't feel like I'm in a good spot, and I lost 147 to 96. Listen, it's week 1. Usually whenever my teams put up less than 100 points in a given week, the next week, they typically flip it around and probably have themselves, a bounce-back performance. At least that's how I feel for my team. So I'm not too worried about losing in week 1. Again, I have won many of leagues starting 1-3, because all that matters is making the playoffs. Legitimately, all you have to aim for is 8 wins. You need 8 wins in 14 weeks to make a 6-man out of 12 playoffs. So just be patient. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Miracle Robinson says, I need TJ Hawkinson to score 7 points. Brother, you and me both. TJ Hawkinson, I mean, just the offense as a whole for 3 quarters looked like a disaster. So the fact that they were even able to score gives me some confidence, or at least some semblance of confidence going forward in this circumstance. But as of right now, man, if I was you, Miracle Robinson, let's go look at what's available on the waivers at tight end. Juwan Johnson, Harold Fannin, Brenton Strange, Michael Mayer. Maybe let's go in and explore that opportunities going into this week. Tom Lee sends in a question. Tom, thank you very much, sir. Says, drop Loveland to pick up Pittman or Fannin. My starting tight end is Njoku. Wide receivers are Ladd, T. Higgins, Pickens, Pearsall. Hold on to JJ. Starting quarterback is Brock, who's injured. Okay, so you have a lot of things that you need to address on this team. First and foremost, tight end. Having Loveland and Njoku scares the living crap out of me, because Njoku at this point is the number 2 tight end on his own team, and Loveland, based on just watching this game, seems like he's the number 2 in terms of snap count. I mean, the first snap of 11 personnel, he's not on the field, which is already scary. And even the depth of his targets are not even just, sufficient enough as of this moment. So Loveland's not a startable player right now, which again, we assumed that there was a possibility that that could be the case. So going forward, look, the thing about Fannin is if you pick up Fannin, you can't just insta-start him. You could try to, and we'll cross our fingers and we'll hope for the best, but I think Fannin is a guy that I want to have as my number 2 tight end until I can see another consecutive week of like, oh, okay, this is legit. This is not going away. Now, even though my opinion is he's never going away, and the way that they utilize them as a quarterback, fullback, wide receiver, tight end, they literally use them in every position they possibly could. Even though I have such a strong belief in Fannin right now, I still am of the opinion where it's like, okay, am I dropping Loveland for him? No. Am I dropping Njoku for him? No. So where does that leave us? That leaves us in a pretty tough spot to where, that leaves us in a really tough spot to where we got to make some tough decisions. And at that point, I'm rather looking towards like, okay, you know what? If push comes to shove, then I'm just going after Juwan Johnson and I'm dropping Loveland, because I can't even afford to start Njoku anymore, or I have to wait for him to at least show me some signs of life rather than 37 yards on 3 grabs. So yeah, it's a tough one. Now, as for the Michael Pittman question, let me look at your wide receivers. You have Ladd, T. Higgins, Pickens, and Pearsall. Yeah, you're fine a wide receiver. You don't need it. Again, T. Higgins will be better. Ladd and Pearsall are solid. Pickens will be better in due time. Hold JJ, as in JJ McCarthy. Yeah, at this point, hold JJ, start him because Brock's injured. Thank you. All right, Luis Castillo says, hey man, in a 10-team standard league, I went RB Hero, okay, with Jacobs, McCaffrey, and Pollard. Yeah, that's not RB Hero RB. Hero RB is you get one singular player. That you have the Avengers RB. That's what you have, okay? So you have the Justice League of running backs. It says, I'm weak at wide receiver with Pickens, McMillan, Odunze, and Keon Coleman. Wondering what wide receiver I can trade for if I give up Jacobs. If you are going to trade Jacobs, basically go back and look at your draft board and the wide receivers selected right around him in the same round, in round 2. Those are the guys you are eligible to potentially go and get. The Drake London, Nico Collins, BTJs of the world. If you want, you can theoretically go after, you're playing in a standard league. So really, whatever you're going to get in exchange, technically you got him in like yeah, as of right now, that's your 2nd round pick. So you'd have to go for a 2nd round wide receiver, whatever that potentially entails in this circumstance. Thanks, man. But if I was you, considering it's a standard league, I'm holding. I'm letting Jacobs carry me and just let it ride. Thanks, man. Don Roy Morales sends in a question. Says, in a half PPR, trade away JT and Kenneth Walker for Chase, Gibbs, and Kincaid. Yeah, sounds good. 100%. I don't understand how you're able to get away with that trade. I don't know who's trying to give away Jamar Chase for free, but do not allow their stupidity to inhabit you or prevent you from taking advantage of that. Now, I think it's going to be vetoed, but nonetheless, I would make that trade. Let's see here. C Manish sends in a question. Says, terrified as Kenneth Walker manager. Yeah. The thing about Kenneth Walker is that you cannot trade him away Because if you were to try to trade him away right now, you are unlikely to get much in return. Because if anybody watched football this weekend, they watched Charbonnet take away those goal line carries. And even though, yes, Charbonnet had 0 targets, and this could be a 50-50 split in terms of the opportunity share potentially going forward at best case scenario, it is still very much so not what we anticipated it to be. And with that being the case, of this being a 60-40 split in terms of carries, snaps in the favor of Charbonnet, who has looked like the better running back in terms of efficiency for the last couple of years here, at this point, shoot. If you can sell him and you can get back anything in exchange that's actually of value, I would do it. If you don't have Charbonnet, it's the move. If you do have Charbonnet, then you're pretty much holding Kenneth Walker as Charbonnet's handcuff. Okay, I've caught up on the super chats. I appreciate y'all sending those through. Jeez, sorry about that. I was trying to look off screen and read something while talking. I will not do that again. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Really quickly, before I continue to answer questions, how long have we been here for? About an hour. Probably going to keep the stream going for about maybe another 10-15 minutes. Then we're going to call it because, again, I got to go ahead and finish watching all of the games from this past weekend to get ahead of the running back rankings video for tomorrow. Again, we're going to be talking about top 36 running backs. Until then, let's continue to answer questions, shall we? Again, if you guys haven't yet already, click the like button down below. Thank you. All right, let's see here. What do we have here? Jacinto in the chat says, would you drop Luther Burden for Quentin Johnston immediately? Yes, Luther Burden doesn't play. We dropping Okonkwo for Fannin? Absolutely, without a doubt, Desmond. Let's see here. Arlen, what's up, my man? Says, as a Kamara manager, should I pick up Jawan Johnson still instead of Kraft? Or pick up Fannin instead? Again, look, okay, so here's my strategy on Fannin, guys. Fannin, in my mind, I'm going to treat like he is Isaiah Likely. Okay? So what that means is I am not going to allow him to be my tight end 1. I'm going to at least roster 2 tight ends if he is on my roster or if he's on my team. Because I don't want to get burnt by utilizing a high kind of waiver priority or a good chunk of fab, whatever it may be. Because we all know that people in week 1 maybe overreact at tight end. Maybe they had an injury, Brock Bowers, Kittle, and they may overspend in week 1. Allow them to do that. But I'm not going to put myself in a position to where I have only Fannin as my option, and I'm relying on him to completely be a game breaker. So I want to try to get 2 tight ends. If it ends up having to be like I get Fannin and Brenton Strange, beautiful. I'll have them both on roster. I'll put Kittle in my IR, and I'll just stand pat, and I'll just play matchups as we continue on and see who can at least build the consistency to where I can trust them henceforth. Like Botan in the chat was saying, do I get Harold Fannin or I go for Jawan Johnson on the waivers? I'm going for Jawan Johnson. That's where I would go. Chip Heck in the chat says, I'm looking for more depth at running back in a 14-man full PPR league. I want to trade Devon Achane for Chuba Hubbard and Zach Charbonnet. What do you think? If you can get away with that and you're looking for the depth pieces, I think that is a perfectly fine move because of what we witnessed out of Charbonnet. Drew, do I drop Blue for Samson or Hollywood? I would rather have, well, okay, look, here's the thing. Yes, I would rather have Hollywood because I think if Hollywood is going to be the number 1 for the team for the next 3 to 4 weeks, theoretically speaking, and if that shoulder injury is going to plague Xavier Worthy until further notice, because again, coming back from that kind of an injury takes a little bit of time, I think the volume of fantasy points that Hollywood will provide to your fantasy team in the short term will win you a couple weeks here. And really, again, like I mentioned, if you're playing in a 12-team league and 6 team makes the playoffs, you want 8 wins. And if I can get an extra 3 wins here off of one singular pickup, I would probably go in that direction in terms of my investment. Andrew, would you trade Kincaid for Devontae Smith? I have Warren as my starting tight end and Hurts as my QB. If you need the wide receiver depth, I'd feel comfortable doing so. Robert in the chat says, yo, Andrew, rough start for me. Start Charbonnet over K9 next week. I would, yes. And I mean, look, they're both going to be ranked in my top 36. That's a given. But Charbonnet will be ranked higher. Again, he played 60% of the snaps in comparison to the 40% that Kenneth Walker played. He was 2.5 times more efficient per rushing attempt. I mean, again, in terms of missed tackles forced, in terms of everything efficiency-wise, significantly better. Obviously, a lot of the runs, some of them weren't really Kenneth Walker's fault. I mean, the offensive line needs to do their share, but still. As a whole, the opportunities that were the most valuable which is goal line right now, and the rushing opportunities within this offense went in the opposite direction. So Kenneth Walker has to, of course, until further notice, be a little bit of a downgrade option. Victor in the chat says Fanning legit, but that's all about. Yeah, but that was Mr. Nice Guy. Victor Raga was saying, drop Jerome Ford for Kenneth Gainwell. I don't really want either on my team, but if you were theoretically going to drop Jerome Ford because of Quinshon Judkins returning, then yes. Zai sends in a question. Thanks, man. Zai says, my starters are Daniels, Swift, Tracy, London, Worthy, Kittle, McCaffrey, and Keenan Allen. On my bench, should I trade? And Keenan Allen on my bench. Okay. Should I trade in a 12-man full PPR? Who do I move? I mean, look, at this point, your glaring theoretical weakness is injury. Worthy and Kittle getting injured is as bad as it could possibly get for you. So I'm not trading. I'm trying to first and foremost address the holes in my team by picking up players off the waiver wire. That's how we should look to improve our team to begin with. Because trades in itself, everyone's looking to try to win a trade. Unless you can find a fantasy manager that is over panicking for a player. And let's say, for example, you found somebody this week that... Let's think about the tight end position here. Considering you have Kittle, I'm not trading for one. I'm just picking up one and I'm playing him because I know that in a couple weeks, Kittle's back and we're good to go. If this is a season-ending injury, then we would have the discussion for a trade. But at this point, I'm picking up a short-term option that has a solid, matchups ahead and has great opportunity share. Juwan Johnson, Harold Fannin, Brenton Strange, accordingly. And then as for the rest of your team, we are hopefully looking to potentially improve upon, because again, Worthy's going to be out, that wide receiver 2 position, or wide receiver 1, whatever you want to kind of consider it as, by hopefully getting Hollywood Brown off of the waivers as well, if we can utilize priority there, or potentially Fab. So getting Hollywood Brown, getting a backup tight end to fill in for Kittle, putting those guys on the IR if available, and then subsequently after, just sending some questions at the Omarion Hampton manager, saying, hey, what's good? And let's see what's going on. Daniel Gonzalez sends in a question. Says, in a 10-team full PPR, rate my team. We have Purdy. Fields. Okay, so we have Fields this week because Purdy, I don't even know if he's going to play. We have running backs, Kyrie Williams, Bucky Irving. Cool. We have Breece Hall, who played, guys, let me tell you, just from the first rushing attempt, Breece Hall just looks like a different running back than I remember, at least. My goodness, the offensive line was getting on the linebackers and letting him fly. But yeah, he looks great. And if you invested in him, good on you, because I was off him for a while. And I hope for the best, and I hope that he stops getting those touchdowns stolen from him because we know he's a great talent, but my goodness, those touchdowns, at least one of them's got to go in his direction. We can't steal them all, right, Justin Fields? You have Kenneth Walker, you have Judkins, you have Lamb, Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen, Kelsey. Who should I go for? If I was in your position, considering you have really strong players at quite literally every position, I'm trying to just go for the best player. Like if Hollywood Brown is available, I'm picking him up and trading him. Or I'm picking him up and I am playing him. But ultimately, like if you're playing in a priority league, let's say, for example, you're priority 10 this week, I don't even put in a waiver. I'm moving up the list and I'm hoping for a season-ending injury next week and I'm cashing in on that later. So as of right now, that's how I would approach it. I'm either making a waiver pickup to immediately trade the player, because when I look at your roster, very few of these players should even be on this team. You're just stacked across the board in a 10-man roster. I just can't even believe that you were able to put together this team. So for now, keep it as is. Pick up players in the potential hopes that you could trade them in the short term. Okay. Where are we at here? Okay. Couple more questions, and then we're going to be heading out. Before I go ahead and answer said questions, somebody asked Pitts or David Njoku. As of right now, let's go with Pitts because of the injuries that have taken place to the Falcons. Keep Ibuka and Charbonnet. Who are we talking to, guys? Who is asking about Ibuka and Charbonnet? Anyway, really quickly. Really quickly. Fast reminders. Besides, of course, Betr, where you'll get my Sunday morning rankings. Again, any other way to potentially ask me questions in regards to the upcoming waiver wire, starter sits, all that kind of jazz, besides, the live streams that we'll be conducting today, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Again, if you guys haven't checked out the Patreon and that's something that you guys are potentially of interest of, again, you'll get my rankings weeks 1 through 18. Well, obviously week 1 has passed, so I need to update that graphic, but in regards to that, you'll get, of course, the exclusive Discord server access, and you'll be able to ask me any and all questions outside of the live streams and, of course, the comment section. Appreciate y'all supporting the channel. Let's answer a couple more questions here, and we'll head on out so I can go continue working on those running back rankings. Breece Hall looked like it was 2023. Yeah, he did, legitimately. And that was a surprise to me. And the funny thing is 2023 Breece Hall was the Breece Hall that was coming off of the ACL. I'm keeping Bo Nix on the bench, right? Depends on what your alternative option is, but yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. Binks sends in a question. Says, in a 10 team, Keon dropped, fab percentage dump. Fields got Bo. Okay. So, depends on the necessity for Keon Coleman. Okay. Let's say, for example, we have 100 fab. In terms of percentages that I want to utilize for Keon Coleman, I'm thinking more of the line of, this is what I'm thinking people are going to spend for him, just off of the number of points he scored. There are probably players in your league that didn't even watch the touchdown grab he had, which was tipped off of somebody's hands. So in the event in which he probably goes for like 18, if I had to guess, 18%, that might be a little bit rich, but it depends on wide receiver depth. If you're like, listen, Andrew, everyone's going to go for Hollywood Brown, Keenan Allen, like stuff like that's available somehow, some way, then sure, you might be able to have an opportunity at like a 15, 14, 13 range. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, you're going to have to drop 18 to 20, which I mean, man, it's early, but when you have technically a wide receiver associated with Josh Allen that's getting a pretty good target share, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to spend that kind of amount. As for Fields, though, I would be afraid to see how much he goes for. I think somebody's going to drop 35% on him in your league. So if you want Fields, when you have Bo Nix, are you really willing to spend 30% of your fab capital? I legitimately think that's how much it's going to go. If not, like it's going to be like a 26% at base minimum, because 30 points is just too enticing. And the idea of somebody having that once they had a terrible quarterback performance, I have a hard time thinking week one is just so difficult, guys, to win fab bids, because people overspend and think, oh, this is all I need to fix my team. And then the next week, their team all gets hurt, and then they have to fix it again. You know, it just becomes it's a vicious cycle there. Xavier says, DK or Ridley rest of season, full PPR? Good question. It's still been it's been DK all off season. I'm going to stick with DK even now. Jake Sosa says, Gibbs, Evans, London performances worry. London looked great. Or are we just talking about his injury? Because, am I crazy? But Drake London was targeted like an absolute madman. 8 catches for a 55. I'll take it. Like, how many targets was this? 15. Shoot, I'll take it. I don't care. Evans, not worried about. Happens every year. He'll miss a couple, well, not miss, but like he'll just have a couple games where it duds. Gibbs getting 10 receptions is as good as it gets. I'm not worried. I'll put it that way. It's week 1. We're good. Man, it's crazy. My starters were premeditated picks in the draft, and they did me dirty on day 1. Yeah, that happens, man. Trophy says, how do we feel about Allen, Benson, and Mason after this week? Mason looked really good. Really good. Braylon Allen, not so good. Trey Benson, I think he's just a handcuff. Flotation, what's up, my man? Says on Twitter/X, full PPR, really disappointed, as did Andrew. Let's see here. Where are we at? Did Mark Andrews do you dirty, man? I mean, look, Mark Andrews, for a game in which the Baltimore Ravens score 40 points for him to get 1 reception, if I'm a Mark Andrews manager, what I was thinking earlier today is maybe I should just go grab Isaiah Likely and throw him on my IR and just wait. Because if Mark Andrews isn't the answer and this is the actual Isaiah Likely year, I mean, shoot, maybe. Am I crazy? Anybody else thinking that? Because that's kind of where that's where mine's going at the moment. Okay, let's see what you have here. Flotation sends me his team. His team consisting of Josh Allen, Jahmyr Gibbs, Aaron Jones, St. Brown, DJ Moore. Did you win this week? You lost. Jeez Louise. Ridley was disappointing. Mark Andrews was a disaster. Okay, so we need to improve upon. Okay, so I see what we need to do here. Russell Wilson is probably someone that is on your team that's never going to start unless you have a recent. I mean, looking at Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence, if I'm not mistaken, I think they have like week 7, 8 bye weeks. I don't know if Russell Wilson's still going to be the starting quarterback by then. So if I'm you, I'm probably dropping Jackson Dart now. I mean, I'm dropping Russell Wilson now in a super flex and picking up Jackson Dart preemptively. Additionally, I'm dropping Najee Harris in order to go pick up a backup tight end. I'm dropping, oh, you already have Hunter Henry. Okay, so you can just kind of roll with that. And then I'm just dropping Najee Harris or Rashad Bateman for best available opportunity guys off of the waivers. Says the loss this week, the guy has AJ Brown and wasn't, yeah, he wants, the guy, what does it say? Guy with AJ Brown wants St. Brown. He's also got JJ McCarthy. Trade, question mark? I mean, do I want JJ McCarthy over Lawrence? Technically, after today, I'm considering it. I got to think about that one. It depends on what the trade actually looks like. If you can go figure out what the trade would look like and then ask me, then at that point, I'll be able to give you like 100% yes or no. Otherwise, it's just speculatory. Janelle sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew, questions in the chat. Thank you, Janelle. Appreciate it. Okay, this is going to be one of the final questions, and I'm going to go ahead and head out, guys. I appreciate y'all. I'm in an 18 PPR 2 flex league, says Janelle. Starters are Baker Mayfield, Amari Hampton, Bucky Irving, Jamar Chase, BTJ, Kamara, Devontae Adams, Hawkinson. Yeah, so you basically had disappointment central across the board. Chase, BTJ, Kamara, Adams, Hawkinson, Bucky, Hampton, I think all performed far below expectation. I'd even venture to say Baker performed below expectation. Additionally, your entire bench, McMillan, Golden, expectations far below it. Same thing with Tracy, but at least Hollywood and, of course, Debo are on your bench. So, of course, you have value there, potentially even trade value. Because if I'm looking at it for the future, Chase and BTJ are never coming out of my lineup. So if I'm in your position, sure, maybe we could take advantage of playing Hollywood for the next couple weeks in the flex position. But otherwise, if maybe you can flip that for somebody like, oh, I'm so upset about my Nico Collins not playing well. Hey, here's Debo Samuel. You want to trade? Beautiful. Thank you very much. Here's Hollywood Brown. And just cash in on these like kind of short-term like bumps of production. But in terms of your team, again, I think you've got a really talented team across the board, considering the 8-team format. When your bench consists of, you know, what it does, and you have the opportunity of going out and picking up players like Fields, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, you know, do it. I mean, again, if you can drop us, you know, the potential of a Jordan Mason and go get JCM, I think that helps you ultimately. You can even drop, you know, Scatterboo for all I care and go pick up Fields on top of that. So yeah, that'll definitely help. All right, guys, I think that's where we're going to call it here. Again, Quinn, I see you. I'm going to go to the Patreon and answer right now. I will respond to you in just a moment. Outside of that, I do appreciate y'all going. You know what? Let me see if I can just answer. Let's see how quick it is, Gwen. Because if it's something that requires like a really long response, then maybe I just type it out. But let's check it out right now real quick. Okay. Let's see. All right, Gwen, what do we have here? Let me read it. It says, I'm picking up Allen, JCM, Etienne, and Samson. Which waiver order would you recommend? Okay, so when we talk about Allen, we're talking about Braylon. If that's Braylon Allen, okay, theoretically speaking, the order in which I would have these running backs kind of aligned, I would specifically go JCM 1, Etienne 2, Samson 3, Allen 4. Okay, Gwen. And then it says also, would you drop Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams for Daniel Jones? Not yet, no. Or Reed is currently dropping Reed for Jones. I don't need to have that many quarterbacks on roster. I would leave Jones out there. Just let it, you know, let it float. I'm okay with having those two guys as my future. I have Bowers. Would you drop Jonnu Smith for Brenton Strange, Juwan Johnson, or Fannin? Yes, I would drop Jonnu Smith for all of them, to be honest. So any of the three that you're able to get in exchange, I would do it. Says I won my 2 of my 3 leagues, but I lost my 12-man league, money league, because I played Lawrence over Caleb Williams. Yeah, that's rough, man. Sorry, Gwen. I mean, again, it happens. It happens. Trevor Lawrence against the Carolina Panthers team that could not score still manages to be an underwhelming performer. What an actual lovely weekend, isn't it? Trust me. As someone who has Trevor Lawrence in his main league and got 11 points in a 6-point per passing touchdown format, it is as unfortunate as it could possibly be. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all. Again, I'm going to go answer Patreon questions right now. So again, if you guys have sent me over a question via Patreon, I will take care of that in just a moment, and then we'll be good to go. Outside of that, good to go. Appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of your Monday night. I will be back tomorrow with my top 36 running back rankings tomorrow afternoon, posted on the channel. I've already posted my waiver wire video earlier today. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to do so. And of course, click the like button on that. And then I'll be back tomorrow night probably around 7 p.m. PST. Of course, answering questions and, of course, getting to the bottom of some of these waiver wire potential options as we proceed. Until then, enjoy the rest of your night. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.